Hey, so good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever the heck you are, whenever the heck you are. I am so excited that you're here because today we get to talk to my friend Dianna Booher. Now, get this. She's the best-selling author of not one, not two, but holy crap, 47 books published in 60 foreign language editions. Her latest titles include Communicate with Like a Leader, What More Can I Say, Why Communication Fails, What to Do About It, and Creating Personal Presence. Now, here's the crazy thing. She's worked with IBM, ExxonMobil, BP, PepsiCo, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Lockheed Martin, BNSF, Novartis, Brinker, the U.S. Navy, yay, go Navy, and NASA. But Dianna tells me there's just one client that she absolutely failed to improve communication, and that's the U.S. Senate. Love that. We're not going to talk political today, but I am with Dianna Booher. Good morning, Dianna. How are you?
I am fine, Phil. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. I'm so glad. So this is the first time we're going to get to spend some quality time together, and you've done so much. So the first question I got to ask you is, what the heck keeps you writing after doing 47 books?
I absolutely love it. I love it. I must have lived a lot to have all that stuff inside. But actually, I had a client in my office yesterday, and he was talking about his idea, and I got so involved in his idea, I was throwing these ideas out. I don't know where they come from, but I just get excited about a lot of things, I guess.
That's awesome. I love that. I love talking to a master who keeps working the craft, because so often we get bored. I'm guilty of that. I often get bored and like, okay, squirrel, I'm going to go chase that shiny ball. And you just keep writing. And that's incredible. So rewind here. How did you get started recognizing that you were a writer?
Well, it's not anything glamorous. A lot of times people tell you, well, I had this dramatic experience and I just had to tell the world. It really wasn't that. I just wanted something to stay home with my kids. I just couldn't think of getting up, when my kids were little, toddlers, babies, and taking them out to a babysitter. And I thought, my idea of being a writer was to have this back before computers. I was going to have this typewriter sitting up on a little card table in my bedroom, write the great American novel, throw it out, and wait for the movie version to come out. cash my first million, and that was my idea. But nothing glamorous that happened that I wanted to tell about. But my master's thesis was a novel, and I sent it out to an agent, and it got published. Lo and behold, I didn't know what a fluke that was. But I was hooked once I got, into it. And then for business books, the reason I started writing business books is that I was having lunch with an engineer, and he said, our engineers can't write. They're terrible. We pay a lady big bucks to come in here and teach them how to write. And so I went, aha, money. And so I started listening to problems, and then just started, okay, I can solve that. I can research how to do that. And then once I started working with clients and finding out, what the problems were, then you find out solutions. You get with other people and find out solutions and research it, and they turn into books.
That's awesome. So your first published work was a novel?
Actually, I was doing a couple of things at a time, but I had published actually an article, and in the meantime, while that book was coming out. So I kind of think, or say two books were coming out at the same time, wrote an article, and it was for a Christian living organization. And this editor calls me up and says, can you turn that into a book? And I went, I don't know. And so while that book was coming out, I was finishing up my master's degree. And then, so they kind of came out simultaneously. That was a nonfiction book. And then the novel came out the same year, actually.
Wow. That's awesome. So how long does it take you? How long did it take you to write a book?
Typically a book takes about 3 weeks. I have done one as short as 48 hours, but now I'm not talking about the entire process. What I'm talking about when I give those time frames is actually drafting it. I mean, you may research something for your lifetime, or you might research it, for 5 years. And a lot of times the research, the surveying or interviewing will take a long time. But once I sit down to the computer and I start, keying it in. That's the time frame. And I actually keep track of that because I need to plan that time in my schedule. I may have a lot of speeches booked at this certain period. And then I think, okay, here's the window. I don't have anything booked in the first 2 weeks of August. That's when I'm going to write it. And I plan my year like that. So I actually know how many hours it's going to take me. And so the typical time to draft it is 2 to 3 weeks. And then I'll put it aside, let it cool off for about a month so I can read it with fresh eyes. And then I may come back and spend that much time again editing it. And then that's typically the total time. So it depends on, how much interviewing you're going to do, how much research you're going to do, how many times you have to edit. Sometimes I come back and edit it again.
So do you do all your own editing, or do you have an editor that you work with, or both?
I always do all my own editing, and most of the time, all my own research. Occasionally, I will contract, if I'm going to do a big survey, I'll contract out with a research firm. Occasionally, if I want a lot of statistics on some key things, like when I wrote the book, The Voice of Authority, that came out 7 or 8 years ago, I wanted some real specific research in the healthcare field. And I went to a graduate department and had the dean of that department, actually in the social sciences department, do some research from some major studies. So occasionally, one time I had an intern actually, because I just wanted some facts. And I said, I don't have 2 days to spend, just going researching these facts. They weren't major studies. They didn't have to be interpreted or analyzed. So I used an intern. So occasionally I'll have somebody help with research. But interviewing, if I'm interviewing key clients for things, I do all those, because you never know when you're going to ask follow-up questions. They say something and that probes me to say, wait, we need to take a detour here. There's something underlying. I want to ask a why question, a how question. And somebody else doing that wouldn't know to go there, so to speak, or to read between the lines, or to ask those follow-up questions. So I always do any kind of interviewing I want to do. But most of the time, my research is about the work that I've done, the consulting work that's the basis for a lot that I write about.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So 47 books, and you have a full-time consulting and speaking. I mean, holy cow. So talk to me about, like, what's a typical day for you, Dianna?
Depends on what day, Phil. Which day are you talking about? Now, I've recently sold my training business. So I've written books. Some years I've written as many as 2 books a year. There have been other years that I didn't write any book. In fact, one year I had 4 books that came out. Now, I didn't write them all in that year, but they just happened. They were with different publishers, and they were just happening to the fall. Their publication dates those years. And I was promoting all year, didn't write anything that year. 4 came out, and I was promoting, because they were in different categories. It was a novel, and then a young adult book, and then 2 business books. So it depends on, literally what year and what month and what day. But a typical day, if I'm writing, is to get up really, really early and start being at the computer at 6 o'clock. And I will put in a 14, 16-hour day writing. I mean, literally, and my breaks are such that to take a break, to get up from the computer, is to go get dressed. I come back, and that's my break, or to inhale my food for that day. I mean, I am here keying, working all day. If I need to stretch, that's when I'm getting up, actually jogging in place or doing calisthenics or something. But if I'm out traveling, then that's maybe when I take some reading. If the researcher has sent me some studies, then while I'm sitting on the plane, that's when I'm, devouring all those studies before I start. Or maybe I'm outlining. I'm taking my laptop with me, and I'm outlining the whole thing. So I really have it planned around my traveling schedule. But then I may be gone for 3 months with booked, 4 days out of the 5 if I were training. Now, since I've sold my company, pretty much I'm writing all the time. I'm either coaching somebody to write a book. I do some book coaching now, and leading them through the process of developing their query, developing their proposal, brainstorming with them to create their sellable idea, or I'm working on my own books.
Wow. So talk to me a little bit about that sellable idea, because that's something that a lot of people I know struggle with. They say they want to write a book, but then they don't know what the heck they want to write. I mean, they put it together and it's like, well, that sucks. That doesn't really work. So can you explain a little bit about that process of how you find an idea that's sellable?
Well, a lot of people, you've hit the right word. It's a sellable idea. A lot of people want to write about what they know, and they should write about what they know, but they have this huge amount of knowledge. I mean, they are extremely knowledgeable on a subject, and they don't know how to winnow it down until it makes something unique. And a lot of times they don't pay attention to what other people have done in the area, and they're just regurgitating what's already out there. And they think it's unique. That's the problem, because they haven't researched out there. And what editors will tell you, the very basic thing is to know what everybody else has done so you don't repeat it. You always have to come up with the unique angle. And in your proposal, a key thing to put in your proposal is how your book differs. Well, if you don't know what else is out there, you don't know how your book differs. So it's basically malpractice to not be able to tell what the unique angle is. So what you're having to do when you come up with your unique angle or your idea is really sometimes have somebody work with you to draw out of this vast body of experience that you've had, what the market is looking for, and then help you figure out what's unique about it, how it's different. And just sometimes you're so close to the issue, you don't know how to figure out what it is that's so common to you, but what's very unique to somebody else.
Interesting. So how long does that normally take, Dianna? I know this is a generalization, but are we talking like a day, a week, a month, 6 months? What are we looking at there for that process to find what's unique? Sometimes
it can be 10 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour, but it's not long. Somebody called me. This is maybe 6 weeks ago, and they were needing just sort of the tagline for the uniqueness. They said, "I know it was a book on leadership, and you know how many books are on leadership. Everybody's out there talking about leadership now." And they said, "I just got this huge body of knowledge, and I know this book is going to be wonderful, but there's got to be something unique about it. I can't publish this book until I know what the unique part of it is." And as she told me about it, it just popped into my, well, what you're really saying then, the way it's unique is, and once I just said it to her, she, "Oh, that's it." She was just so close to it. And that was a 10-minute phone conversation. On the other hand, sometimes I may need an hour to ingest what they're telling me. Well, here's what everybody else has done, but what I do differently with the client, and that may take an hour. But it's not a long period of time. It's just sometimes people know so much they don't realize everybody else doesn't have that same body of knowledge, and it's hard for them to step away from it. Yesterday, the person I was working with has this great concept about marriage counseling, and it's very unique. But I mean, marriage counseling is marriage counseling, But he had a great analogy, and once he just gave me the tip of that analogy, I was able to just start throwing out. Well, here's another angle to that analogy, and here it works here, and it works here, and it works here, and here's another angle. I mean, he started out with let's say what do you call it, hectagon, and we just started, making all kinds of shapes and more sides, and it didn't end up with 5 sides. We ended up with about 9 sides to it. So I don't know what kind of shape you would call that, but we came up with, instead of 5 or 6 parallels in that analogy, we came up with about 12 parallels in that analogy. So you just need somebody else who's with you and loves the idea to bounce ideas off.
Excellent. So I mean, obviously they could work with you, but how does someone even know that that's something somebody else can do? I mean, so many people say that, oh, well, I can be your book coach, and then they don't offer any help there. So how do we kind of call the good stuff from the crap?
I would say, look at the track record. I mean, that's one thing. Look at their major publisher. Anybody can publish today. Literally, anybody can publish because we have the tools. I mean, you can go to Designer. You can tomorrow. There really is a guy that published a book called The Foot Book, who literally took a picture of his foot and on the cover and did blank pages, put it up on Amazon in 24 hours, had 3 of his friends to go buy that book, and it became a bestseller on Amazon. Literally, anybody can publish a book. And therein is the difficulty in publishing a good book with a major publisher, because there's so much junk out there. It's hard to find. And if you think about it, it's really hard to find a professional speaker or consultant or coach who hasn't written a book. So I would say, look at their track record, look at the awards they won for their writing, look at the publishers they've published with, look at how many copies they've sold. If you can get a hold of that data, BookScan will report about 50%, but there's another whole massive amount of sales that they've made on their own that there's not much way to know about that. And that will tell you their expertise, because as I said, anybody can say they're an agent, anybody can say they're a writer, just like anybody can say they're a speaker, anybody can say they're a consultant. You have to look at their bank account.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. So
look at their calendar.
Yeah, right. So how busy are they really versus how busy do they really say they are? That makes a lot of sense. So how do we as we kind of flip that over then, if we're new writers and we're thinking, boy, I really want to write my book. I really want to get something out there. I mean, how does one even get started on the process?
Well, it's really easy because so many people have great expertise. They just haven't taken the time to understand the process. There are so many smart people. I'm not all that smart. And if I can do it, anybody can do it if they want to put in the commitment. It's just basically commitment. It's just learning, like many other things. It's just learning the process. And so what you do is you put together you learn how to do the proposal. You put together a proposal so it's ready. Don't send it out yet, but just have it ready. And then you get a query letter. It's called a query letter, but you send it by email now, not in the snail mail. And you find an agent. And there's several places you can go. I'll go back after I do the process, tell you how you can find an agent. But once you locate an agent that you would like to work with, because publishers no longer read manuscripts that come in, you send that query letter or query email, which will be 4 or 5 paragraphs, just a basic letter saying, here's the book that I want to write. And they will tell you if they're interested or they're not interested based on what you've said. If they say they're interested, they'll say, send it to me. And you go, zap, you've got that proposal written. It was sitting there on your computer and you're ready to send it immediately. What you don't want to do is not have the proposal ready. Send them the letter and say, here's the book I'm thinking about. Are you interested? And they say, yes, send it to me. And then you don't have it ready and you're busy and it takes you 2 months to write the proposal. And then they've forgotten who you are. And, 3 months later, you're sending it to them and they're going, who are you? What did you want? And it goes into some pile somewhere and they read it, 6 months later and they've forgotten all about it. It just won't get read. So do your proposal so it's ready to go. Then identify an agent, write them this little 3 or 4 paragraph email pitching the book proposal. And they say, I love that idea. Send it to me. And then you zap it to them in, 2 hours. And they have that proposal. If they still like the idea and the way you presented it in your proposal, then they will shop it around. They will put together a list of the editors in the top 8 or 10 publishing houses that they think are appropriate for your book, and they will go sell it. They'll know who's buying what editors where are interested in that idea and are looking for it for this time period. They'll send your proposal out. They'll get some offers on it, and they'll come back, call you up and say, Phil, I've got 2 editors or 4 editors here who are really interested in your book idea. They've read your proposal, and one of them is going to offer this much up front, and this one wants to offer this, but they can't bring it out for another 7 months. And this one has just published a book on that, but if you would change it just a little bit, take out chapter 2 and add chapter 8 in there, they would do it for you, and they can pay you this much, etc. So you start talking and decide which publisher you'd like to go with. They give you half of the advance up front, and you go to work writing your book. You get paid up front. It's a great deal. They pay you up front. You send them the manuscript. They pay you the second half when you send the last part of the manuscript. And then you go to work getting your marketing plan, executing, getting your website up there, figuring out everything you're going to do about promoting. You've already thought about some of it because you put that in your proposal. Then they produce the book. They pay for everything. They put it out there. And about 7 months later, your book's going to be in the bookstore. You're going to get copies of it, and you're going to start selling, really promoting it big. Now, in that time, while they're getting ready, that 7 months, they're producing it and getting copies and sending it out to the stores and selling foreign rights and all of that. You got your job because you're planning all of that marketing and executing on all the things you're going to do online. You're going to get more followers. You're going to be telling people on social media about it. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. You're going to get all your friends to go buy copies and send it to their friends and influence people and tell people about it. All of that's happening during that 7 months while you're waiting for it to come out. So that's the process. That's the process.
Wow. Well, that's simple, but that's certainly not easy. That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And that's the reason most people don't go with a major publisher, even though it would skyrocket their reputation. It's work. You just said it. It's work. It's a commitment. And most people just don't work that hard. They just simply don't work that hard. And I talk to people all the time and say, I'm going to write this book. I'm going to write this book. And they've been talking about it for 12 years. I'm going to write this book. And eventually they'll throw something together that's not good enough to get published just to get something out there. They'll just throw something together or go get somebody else to write it, or, it just takes work. It takes commitment. And most people are very, very smart. They're just not that committed.
Yeah. Wow. So that's the difference. Yeah. That's the difference between someone who really has got a successful book versus someone who's got something that they printed at Kinko's that looks like a book, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, you can get people on Upwork and whatever to do a cover, to do an inside, so it looks good. It's just the content is just not there. It's just not that well written. It's not that well edited. It's just sitting in their garage, because once you write one book and people buy it and they're disappointed, they don't buy the second, they don't buy the third. So that's why you have a lot of one book authors out there.
Interesting. That makes sense. So
Seth Dutton talks a lot about that, why you have a lot of one book authors out there, because it's just junk and it messes up the rest of your career.
Wow. So your first book should really be your best book. And then you should get better from there, right?
Right. You have a lot of people who've published one book, and maybe they've even got it published with a major publisher, and it bombed because it wasn't well done. And then it's downhill from there.
Yeah. So what does it mean to bomb? Do you mean sold one copy, or what does bomb mean for a book, Dianna?
It means it wasn't good. The content wasn't good. It wasn't unique. It wasn't well researched. It was just sort of their experience, bunch of stories they told in a speech, and it wasn't promoted well, and it didn't sell well. The publisher didn't make any money on it, so they don't want to publish again. They don't publish that author. For example, with McGraw-Hill, I've published I don't know, 10 books. I don't even know, 10 books. With Nelson, I published 12 books. You know, a couple of years I was in their top 20 bestsellers for them. So that publisher is going to keep, and you know, that's the largest Christian publisher, Christian business publisher as well. They're now owned by HarperCollins. Penguin has published, you know, repeat publisher for me. So they all publish in unique areas, but they keep publishing your book. Berrett-Koehler's published several of my books. They published Ken Blanchard. They published Brian Tracy. So if they have an author who sells a lot of books, like Thomas Nelson, again, published by HarperCollins, has sold 500,000 copies of one of my books. So I know other people have sold, you know, 2 million copies. They just need to have a break even and then go from there. If they're not even breaking even, they're not going to come back and publish the second book or the third book or whatever. And so you may have a lot of promise, and that's what happens with a lot of publishers. They give somebody a huge advance and think they're going to make a lot of money on them, and then they're just sorely disappointed, and they don't publish the second with them or the third, and they just sort of fade into the background, you know.
Yeah. So if someone's a new writer, how do they get good enough to get a book? How do they get good enough to write more? Not like how does their idea get good enough, but how do they become a good enough writer and a good enough researcher that somebody actually wants to read their book?
I think you can learn to write just like you learn to do anything else. As a speaker, you know, you learn you improve your skills. You get coaching to learn how to become a good speaker. You get coaching to be a gardener. You get coaching to learn how to repair your car. You get skill. You go watch something on YouTube. There's skills, there's coaching, there are books to read on every skill. And writing is no different. I did my master's with the specialization in writing with that goal in mind. I decided that's what I wanted to do after I decided I need to support my family. And so I taught myself to write. I literally went to the library and checked out. I went to the 800 section and I told the librarian there, that's before we had, you know, the internet, you could get everything there. And I said, I need to teach myself to write. And tell me, I didn't even know where to go. She said, here's the 800 section. I checked out books on how to write greeting card verses, how to write articles, how to write business books, how to write confession stories, how to write every kind of article that you could think of. I loaded about 50 to 60 books in the backseat of my car and took them home. And I just read like 3 or 4 weeks. I just read around the clock. I remember waking up. My kids were like 6 months. One was 6 months, 6 months. And the other was 3. And just thinking, I can't wait till they go to their bedtime to put them down. And then in the morning, I would get up like at 5 o'clock and start reading. I just read for about 4 weeks, reading all of those books and thinking, how do I improve? Okay, you do a periodic sentence. What's a climactic sentence? What's an anticlimactic sentence? What's a stronger verb? Even though I had an English degree, undergraduate, that didn't teach me what I wanted to know to become a really polished writer. And I just read, elements of style, how to be a technical writer, everything I could. You can learn a lot from just reading books. But now we even have the internet and YouTube and all of that. So there's just a multitude of ways to learn how to be a polished writer. And so I just say, if you really want to do it, you can do it. You can go to a coach. I'm not trying to sell my services to do it, because I don't think a book coach, is going to sit down and teach you how to write. They can show you and take a page of your writing and edit it for you and say, this is how it needs to be improved. But you're not going to want to pay a book coach to actually teach you to write. And probably most people don't need that. Today, I don't think most people need that. I think people who have the yearning to write already probably have pretty good skills. They just need somebody to do what a professor did for me once. And here's what a professor did. When I was doing my master's thesis, I thought it was already pretty good. And I took it in. It was finished. It was this novel. I took it in. The professor read it. He said, it's good. It's good. It just needs to be tightened. And I said, tightened? What do you mean? And he said, let me show you. And he pulled out this one page. He picked up his pen and he started going. And I sat there and I watched and I went, oh, that's what you mean. I mean, and I studied that page thinking, oh, you can leave out that word and it doesn't change the meaning. Oh, and you can leave out that phrase. Oh, and that whole sentence. Yeah, that is duplication of what I said up here. And it was like the light bulb went on. That 15 minutes of watching him cut that page was like a whole university course in learning how to write. And then he pulled out another page a little later. He says, this is a great page. And I went, a great page out of 300 pages is a great page. And I studied that page and I thought, what is different about this page of dialogue that's different from all the others? And just studying there looking, what? And I picked up the differences between that page that he thought was great and he had written excellent across the top. And what's different about this page that I thought was the same. I just can't emphasize enough how you can teach yourself to write by watching somebody do that simple little exercise. Edit a page in front of you and tell you this one's bad, this one's good. Compare the two. Now, Book Coach can do that for you. And if you have some desire, a beginning writer can do that.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. Yeah, I'm just kind of, wow, it's so interesting to hear that because when I went to college, I remember having instructors that some of them would just, to your point, would just write excellent and never offered any feedback as to why it was good. And some would just completely rip stuff to shreds. And I can tell you, I learned so much more by the stuff that people actually gave me that quality feedback than just the, hey, this is really good. Because, we all get enough sunshine up our skirt. We need to hear how to be better, how to improve.
Right. And watching him just cut this page that I thought was great. I thought I'd handed him a polished copy and seeing him go, mark this up and mark this stuff out. And I only had about, 20 words left on that page after he marked it up. But seeing what he marked out and thought, yeah, that whole sentence could be really said in 3 words. And, that really is just a duplication of what I said up here. And just studying that page I just can't tell you how enlightening that was. And once I got those principles, the principles of what he did there. And then that's what I began to teach when I put together my training company. And I condensed that learning exercise, that one learning exercise. Here are 4 principles of being concise. Stronger verbs, vary your sentence patterns, cut out the clutter. And those are my 3 principles of conciseness. And so it applies to business writing, it applies to technical writing, it applies if you're writing a thank you note. It's just good writing.
Wow. So is one of your books about that, Dianna?
Yes.
If somebody wants to, because you sold a training company, so I'd like to give you some money. So which book helps us write better? Which one of your books?
This is the book that I did for Simon & Schuster called E-Writing, 21st Century Tools for Effective Communication. That came out in 2001, so it's 17 years old, but nothing in there is dated. It is still, writing is writing. And so it's still a very good, solid book. And if you want help just in grammar, I did a book from McGraw-Hill called Booher's Rules of Business Writing, 101 fast and easy ways to correct the most common errors. So that's the grammar side. Excuse me. But those 2 books are still, one, like I said, with Simon & Schuster, the other with McGraw-Hill. And those are evergreen principles. They don't get old or stale as long as we're going to write and as long as we are speaking with proper grammar.
Awesome. Well, Ann Wynn says she's going to check out your book, E-Writing. So we're excited about that. Let us know. Report back, Ann. Come back and tell us what you think. And Tamara McDuff is here with us too today. So, hey, Tamara, glad that you made it. So Dianna, speakers aren't always writers, and writers aren't always speakers. So if I'm a speaker that thinks I've got some ideas, but I don't know that I want to do all this work, because frankly, I mean, wow, it's a lot of work to make this happen. I mean, how do we kind of get past that so we still get a book that we can be proud of, a book that sells, and a book that's there? I mean, is this a service you provide, or what do we do here?
Well, I think it is a matter of thinking long term. You can think about things that you do today that are going to put money in your pocket tomorrow. Or you can think about, I'm going to do this work today that's going to pay off for the next 20 years. And so you have to think of it like that. I'm still getting royalties, a lot of royalties, thousands of dollars a year royalties for work that I did 30 years ago. So when you think about, okay, I spent a month writing this book, and it's turned into $2 million or $3 million or $4 million. I mean, one particular book that I figured that I spent 4 days on, I didn't figure, let me just rephrase that. I know I spent 4 days on it. I actually had a yellow tablet, which I keep in front of me, and I write down every day the date and how many hours I spent, starting time. If I wrote down yesterday, it started at 10:04, and I know how long it took. It took me 4 days to write. And I made over $4.2 million on that book. When you think of it like that, you're making a lot of money per hour. Now, if you start thinking long-term value and long-term income rather than, oh, today I've got to get up and write that book. Oh, it's 14 hours and 16 hours. It's terrible. If you think like that, yeah, it's a lot of work. But if you start thinking, okay, in the next 20 years, I'm going to be making several $1 million. I think I can do this. I use the analogy of dieting. I hate to diet. I've lost the same 10 pounds throughout my life over and over. I gained the 10 pounds ever since I've been a cheerleader in the 8th grade, all the way through high school. I would lose it, gain it, lose it, gain it. Nobody, I don't think, likes to go on a diet. But if you think, I want to be 10 pounds less so I can go to the reunion, so I can be in the wedding, so I can do this, whatever. You can do anything for 2 weeks, right? Most people say, okay, for 2 weeks, I cannot have ice cream. Okay, for 2 weeks, I can suffer and whatever. So think of it like that. For 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I am going to work 10 hours or 8 hours. I'm going to put my head down. If you're working in another job, I'm going to take a 2-week vacation. I'm going to take the weekends on both weekends. I'm going to get up for 2 hours in the morning. I'm going to work in the evening after I get home, plus my vacation. That's 4 weeks. Have it outlined before you start, and then just do it. And then I'm going to live off of the royalties and have those come in. You're going to get a big chunk of it up front, and then you're going to have the royalties for years. And that, it's not just the royalties. It's never just the royalties. It's that's going to lead to foreign sales. My foreign sales many times way outdo my U.S. royalties. And then the audio books and the e-books and the e-courses and the speeches and the consulting assignments. I mean, many times I will have a major contract that will turn into $1 million contract with a major Fortune 500, like some of those that you called out, that will far exceed the book royalties. So if you have a client who's paying you $1 million a year for the course that went with that book, the book generated the training program that generated the speeches, you can see the revenue. So just think, okay, I'm going to spend a grueling 3 weeks or 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it takes writing this book, and the payoff is going to be X $1 million over the next 10 years. You can see that it's a big payoff.
Wow. That's a great way to look at it, and a great way to think of it as an investment in, almost an annuity into your future. If it's something that you're proud of, and if it's not, well, then you need to really think about that. So you're definitely not a fan then of the book as just cheap business card that nobody's going to read, huh?
Absolutely not. In fact, that can come back to hurt you badly. I mean, I know some people that they've sent me their books to endorse, and it's just junk. It's not good. Full of typos and whatever. I'm not saying that people that some of those writers don't have it within them, that they're not talented, that they're not expert, they don't have the expertise. I'm just saying they just weren't willing to put in the commitment to write a quality product. They were looking for something to sell at the back of the room, just to get the name out there. And it really hurt their career.
Yeah. Good one. Good point there. I think that's very true. So how do we, do you have some resources, Dianna, that we can get started? I mean, obviously, we get your books, we get the e-writing book for sure. And we talk about the other book that you mentioned, but do you have any resource on your website where we can get started, or how do we get more connected with you?
You can go to BooherResearch.com, just like my last name. It's Booher, except I hope they don't, Phil. That's hard to remember how to spell. Booher,
Yep.
Booher, BooherResearch.com. And there's a tag on there where it says consulting. I consult in book coaching. So I don't really have any products to sell. I'm not on to really sell anything other than if somebody needs help with their idea. I do it by the hour or by the project. If I have time, I'm doing my own work and my own speaking, and I'm writing my own book, and I have a book going right now. But if somebody wants to do something on the phone and bounce an idea, I will work with them an hour or so. And then if they want to fly in for a day, I'll do it by the day or help them with the project. But most of the time I'm having a CEO that comes in and they want coaching for the whole project. And then I have a fee, and I'll lead them through the entire project, coach them, get them an agent, get them plugged in so that they actually sell their book and see it all the way through.
Awesome. Well, this was awesome stuff today, Dianna. So much goodness. As we close here, what would be one piece of advice that you'd give a writer who really has something within them, but they don't know even how to get started?
I would say that they need to know what's out there, first of all, and then think, what is my unique perspective? Why me? And be able to say that in a sentence. Once you're able to say that in a sentence, you're ready to write.
Awesome. So folks, learn what's unique about you. Figure that out. Get it down to one sentence so that you can then get it forth and get your butt writing. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. Dianna mentioned $4.2 million off of one book project, not just book sales, folks, but all consulting, all sorts of stuff. One book. She wrote 47 though, which is freaking incredible. And Dianna, you shared so much today. Thank you so much for your time today. This was really awesome.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. So folks, if you're listening in and you're still here, you're closing up here, go to Booher Research. That's Booher Research, but never boo Dianna Booher, because she is awesome. Taught us so much today. 47 books, folks. Check her out. Go to Booher Research, get some of her books, read some of her stuff, and learn from someone who's been there before we all have, so you can do better and you can get your great idea out of your brain on paper and actually sell some copies of your book so you make yourself